Making changes to your wellness routine is amazing. It can result in a lot of health and weight loss benefits, but stressing about too many of the small things that don't really make a big impact can often leave people feeling discouraged and likely to fall off the wagon. And the problem is that most people don't know what those small things are. So today I'm sharing 10 things that I think people stress way too much about that really are not going to make the biggest difference in your journey and that you really don't need to be worrying about. Let's dive into it. My name's Autumn. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's in nutrition human performance. And that first thing is, which whole fruit has more sugar? Yes, sugar matters. Sugar is so important. It is one thing that's really driving up the obesity epidemic in the States. And yes, we also shouldn't be living off of fruit. That is not the most nutrient dense way to be living. And it can really drive up the sugar content if you're eating a ton of fruit. But I've also seen people stress way too much about the specific amount of sugar that's in different fruits, especially when we're talking about whole fruit. So when we're talking about like fruit juice and dried fruit, that's a different story. That is going to be artificially a lot higher in sugar than the whole fruits. But generally speaking, almost all fruit is going to be low glycemic load, which means that even if it has variable sugar levels, because of the fiber and because of the water content, it doesn't actually cause a big spike in our blood sugar. And that's what we're really looking to avoid, especially if you're actually eating the fruit along with a meal and not having like a ton of fruit. You don't really have to worry about it causing a blood sugar spike, especially when you're pairing it with protein, fat, and fiber, like if you have a Greek yogurt bowl, some fruit, and nuts. Unless you're following something like the keto diet for therapeutic purposes, you do not need to be stressed about the specific sugar content of these low glycemic load fruits. Okay, the second might come as a surprise, but it's quality of meat. So quality does matter to an extent, but especially when you're first starting your journey, you do not need to stress about it. Yes, like obviously I'm a fan of pasture raised. That is what we use for our protein powder. It's better for the environment. It tends to result in a more favorable fatty acid profile. It's also just better for the animal. It results in a happier life. But also if you're going to the grocery store and buying meat and trying to eat more high quality protein and you just can't afford right now that grass-fed, grass-finished beef, any of the beef is going to be better than not having beef at all. Swapping out those ultra processed foods for having high quality proteins, meaning high diaz proteins, so proteins from animal-based sources, is already such a great and significant step that maybe down the line, if you do want to make some of those changes and go for grass-fed or go for pasture-raised, you absolutely can. But in the meantime, just focusing on the changes of eating more protein, that in itself is such a bigger mover than focusing on the quality of the protein. Okay, the third is stressing about too much sparkling water. So I often see clients like trying to get rid of having soda, and so they swap in sparkling water instead, which is such a great alternative. Sparkling water is not going to have any of the added sugar that soda has. It is just a more hydrating, less toxic option. But then they hear that sparkling water could leach calcium from their bones, and they start to freak out. First of all, it's important to know that the soda is doing much more of this. And second, the idea of sparkling water leaching calcium from bones was really just a theory, and research found that that is not actually true. They found that colas, so obviously like sweetened sodas, those actually can result in bone loss. However, they did not see that with sparkling water. And it is such a better swap to soda. Okay, the fourth thing people stress way too much about is occasionally eating out and worrying about the type of oil the food is cooked in. This is especially true if you only go out to eat like maybe 1 or 2 meals out of the week. And I see this when clients are trying to avoid those highly processed seed oils, which again is a really good thing. You shouldn't be cooking with those. They are more inflammatory. They're much more processed. So that is a great step. But then that leads to a lot of questions that people have to ask when they're out to eat on like what specific oil was their burger cooked on. And quite honestly, that can lead to a lot of stress. It can make the experience of going out to eat a lot less fun and make it so that you're less likely to stick to those changes because it just doesn't seem manageable. When in all reality, having like 1 or 2 meals per week that might have a little bit of seed oils is not going to do the damage of having every single one of your meals have seed oils in it. Probably the stress that you have around making sure that that food doesn't have seed oils in it could cause more issues. And that's especially if you don't go out to eat often. If you go out to eat often, if it's part of your like daily routine, then yes, that is something that you will want to look into and find better options if you aren't able to cook your food at home. Or if you do have like some specific allergy or autoimmune condition where even like a small amount of the seed oils will cause major issues. Yes, that is a time to be very inquisitive. And if you don't go out to eat very often, it's not something that you need to heavily stress about. And then kind of along the same lines, number 5 is worrying about everything being 100% gluten-free. Now caveats, if you're a celiac, if you're gluten sensitive, then obviously you need to look out for that. But not everybody needs to be concerned about completely zero gluten-free food. Gluten can be a gut irritant for anybody, which is why it's good to know which foods just naturally contain high amounts of gluten, namely various wheat products. And then you could choose to avoid those various wheat products or use only naturally fermented wheat products, which does help to drastically lower the gluten content. But looking for like certified gluten-free on things that just naturally don't contain gluten is again stressing too much about the wrong things. Like for example, looking at a salad dressing to make sure that it's 100% gluten-free, especially if it's like a vinaigrette based, or looking at like a yogurt to make sure that it has a 100% gluten-free label, doesn't naturally have gluten. So it's probably not something you need to be concerned about. Yes, there might be some trace contaminants, but again, if you're not celiac or highly gluten sensitive, it's not something that you really need to be concerned about. Okay, the sixth thing people stress way too much about is exactly how long their intermittent fast should be. Now, intermittent fasting is a great tool. It has great metabolic and gut health benefits. However, a lot of people do stress way too much about the exact specific length that they need to have in order to see the best results. From my experience, there's not one specific length of fast that works best for everybody. It's really anywhere between 12 to 16 hours that works best for most people. That length tends to allow for some gut rest while also making sure that you can eat enough during your eating window. But especially if you're like at 14 hours and you're wondering if you should go to 15 hours, really that 1 hour extra is not going to make a substantial difference, especially if you're already having those 3 meals within your eating window. You're eating protein, fat, and fiber. You're using the types of protocols like what we talked about in the 21-day intermittent fasting program to help support your fast. And especially if already the fast length that you have works for you and works for your schedule, that 1 extra hour is not going to make a huge difference, and don't stress about that. Okay, the seventh thing people stress way too much about are supplements in general. I've always viewed supplements as like the nails of a ship and then your food as like the wood of the ship. You can have like the best supplements, the best nails, they could be made out of the best materials, but if the wood that you're using is moldy and rotten, you're not going to be able to have a saleable boat. That's why focusing on those big movers first, the protein, the fat, and the fiber, making sure that you're eating high quality foods from each of those categories, making sure you're eating enough of those foods to support your body and support your goals, that's going to make 95% of the progress. And then once you have those down, yeah, you can add in some supplements based on what your body needs. Like maybe you need some magnesium, or maybe you do need some electrolytes, or perhaps you do need a little bit of a multivitamin to help cover those various bases. But regardless, just taking supplements is not going to cover the 95% of those results that you'll get from food. Okay, the eighth thing people stress way too much about are specific methods of cooking. I get a lot of questions from clients who are asking like, okay, should I roast my vegetables? What temperature should I roast them at? Should I steam it instead? Or maybe should I saute it? Like what's going to provide the best nutrient value for me? And although I really applaud you for wanting to take that extra step, really just any cooking at home in any manner that you enjoy is going to be the best option. Cooking at home, period, has been found to result in just eating more high quality food as well as lower body fat. It gives you so much more control over the food and the quality that you're eating. And all different types of cooking have their different merits, but also it's important to actually cook in a way that you enjoy. Like please don't steam Brussels sprouts. Most people don't love that. That's why people started to hate Brussels sprouts. Instead, sauteing or roasting with butter, so much better. When you cook food in a way that you actually enjoy it, you'll actually eat it and you're more likely to stick with it. Plus your whole family will prefer it too. And that makes it a lot easier to avoid those ultra processed foods that are causing way more issues than any cooking method that you could have at home would. Okay, the ninth thing people stress way too much about are raw veggies. A lot of people think that in order to be healthy, you need to eat a lot of raw veggies, a lot of salads. And if you're cooking those veggies, it like completely loses its purpose. This is not true. In fact, there's a case for having both raw and cooked. When we have veggies or fruits raw, it does help us to absorb certain nutrients better, like vitamin C. However, when we cook veggies, it also helps break down certain tough fibers that make it so we can absorb other nutrients better. Those cooked veggies are also going to be a lot easier for the gut to break down and digest, and therefore it's better for gut health purposes. So there's a place for both of them. And don't stress about trying to eat more raw veggies. That actually could sometimes do more harm than good. Okay, the 10th thing people stress way too much about is trying to eat a lot less after they have a cheat day. People think that they really need to compensate for a cheat day or a treat meal by just not eating the next day, or eating a lot less, or trying to exercise a lot more to burn it off. And again, this isn't true. In fact, this could actually derail your progress. It can make you crave more sugary foods as you're bouncing back. The better thing to do is to go immediately back to your normal protein, fat, and fiber protocol and not try to punish yourself from that treat or cheat meal. In fact, I have 4 treat meal rules that you can follow. These are great to help you enjoy that treat while also bouncing back a lot better and feeling better the next day too. So if you want those details, you can find it with this video next. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love this science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.